So today we are going to talk about the 5 different types of pediatric therapists, and I actually think there might be a couple bonus ones. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Lauren Baker. I'm a pediatric physical therapist, and I love teaching about physical therapy, the biomechanics behind it, and then also just different ways to view physical therapy so that everyone feels as though they have a place. So let's start off right away, the goofy therapist. So there's different types of pediatric physical therapists. And when I became a pediatric physical therapist, I saw all these different types and I really just didn't know who I wanted to be or who I really was. I just didn't necessarily feel like I fit in. And one of the biggest things I love to preach to my physical therapy students is that it's okay to experiment with the different types of pediatric physical therapists or even to invent your own in order to have fun in peds. One of my favorite things about peds is that there is really room for big personalities, and you don't have to necessarily be like someone else if that's just not authentic to you. Personally, I am 100% the goofy therapist. I love just having fun and being goofy and laughing and doing all of these things that maybe make therapy more fun, making goofy noises, making goofy faces, just making kiddos laugh in any and all ways possible. The biomechanics therapist, this type of therapist is awesome. This type of therapist really loves orthopedics. They really love joint motion. They really love breaking movement down into bite-sized pieces and then teaching parents and their other therapist friends how to see movement happen at each joint and how it all works together. These are big picture therapists in the sense of seeing global movement and how each little piece can be broken down and utilized as an intervention to further the global aspect of how a kiddo is moving. So these therapists love to break down like how the kiddo's ankle is moving and how their hips are moving in relation to their gait cycle and how is their pelvis moving, and well, what if we influenced this one thing or this one intervention? Would that result in the kiddo moving better because this one motion looks kind of sticky? The creative game therapist. I so envy this therapist. This therapist can make anything and everything into a creative game. They're the ones that are talking about an obstacle course, having a lava floor, having everything like be in space, and then there's dinosaurs and there's these big characters, and it somehow like all fits together, makes sense, and then also ends up being therapeutic at the same time. This is a straight up superpower, and honestly, I am terrible at this style of therapy. I can maybe like pick like one creative element into a game, like, oh, we can't touch the carpet because it's lava, but like I'm not making the kiddo also a superhero who's on this gigantic mission to save Mars from being attacked by these Godzilla characters. Like that is not how my brain works. And so I am so envious sometimes of these creative game therapists. And when I began in pediatrics, I thought that like I had to create all these elaborate games and I could barely concentrate on making the activity itself therapeutic. That I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I just got to chill here. My brain is not functioning this way. So I got to just own what my strengths are. And that's how I developed more of my goofy personality that I already have, super goofy person, and just kidified that style of my strength instead of trying to create all these games on Pinterest and then like not really getting them right. And then the kids being like, what is going on? This game makes no sense. The Disney therapist. Oh my gosh, my friend Hope loves Disney and she is an amazing pediatric physical therapist. So I do know that there are a ton of peds therapists that super love Disney and they go to Disney World and they go to Disneyland and they can really just connect to their peds patients on such a Disney level, because that's something that is so integral to who they are as people and even just as adults. And then they can own that in the peds space too, which I love. I think that's awesome. I mean, I love little kid movies too. So I'm not a Disney therapist personally, but I also can really respect that because I do also love Disney movies. The children's song therapist. These therapists can memorize all the children's songs. For some reason, their brain, they're probably living in like a 24/7 musical. I don't even know. It's like the coolest thing. And then there's people like me who can only sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So again, not my personal strength, but also so fun when you co-work with a therapist who knows a bunch of children's songs, because then they can just start singing the songs and the kids love it. And it also makes therapy fun. Now, superpower status, when you're working with the therapist or you are the therapist who sings songs like The Monkey's Jumping on the Bed, and then you can relate it to the actual activity that you're doing. Or if you're working with a kiddo on rolling and there's like the rolling out of the bed song, again, like roll over, whatever that song is. And then you're working on rolling. I mean, how great is that? The hands-off therapist is we're going to talk about first, and then we're going to talk about the hands-on therapist. And I do find that this is very dependent on setting, and then also potentially dependent on when the physical therapists themselves graduated. I do feel like generationally, there are different strategies that people have learned from their schooling that they have then been able to actually transition into the more educational space and the hands-off space, but still get really great results. So I'm not saying that if you are a hands-off therapist that you are any better or any worse than a hands-on therapist, but I do want to reiterate that there are different styles of therapy, especially in the pediatric world. And some of the things that the hands-off therapist might do might make the hands-on therapist a little uncomfortable. Some of the things the hands-on therapist does might make the hands-off therapist a little uncomfortable. So again, the hands-off therapist really, really prioritizes education. Now, this does not necessarily mean that they're not doing direct one-on-one service with the patient. It is totally skilled, but maybe it looks a little bit different. Maybe their hands aren't actually giving tactile or touch cues to the child. Maybe they're facilitating movement, but in a way that's more hands-off. So maybe they're not touching the child as much, but they're utilizing toys or positioning to help the kiddo rotate or do activities, but their hands aren't actually like touching the kiddo. Maybe they're educating staff or educating the parents, or they're seeing the kiddo less in person, but they're doing tons of education so that there's a different kind of a combination model. I see this a lot more in the education space. So with having maybe less direct service, but a lot more indirect service where you're collaborating with the teachers and the teaching aides and paraprofessionals, because they have more touch points on the kids or with the kids longer. And so they're able to really take your knowledge. It's kind of like teaching someone to fish that's with the kid all day, right? Versus you just working with the kid for 30 minutes once a week and then expecting a lot of results. So I do feel like there is a lot of validity in a hands-off therapist approach, especially in the educational model with a collaborative model. The hands-on therapist, this is the type of therapist that maybe has additional training in manual therapy techniques, different styles of therapy like NDT, or other ways that, you know, their hands can really facilitate the kiddo's movement. They're not necessarily doing the movement for the child, but they are strategically using their hands as an intervention model so that the kiddo can be more successful and learn the movement pattern that the therapist wants them to learn in a more repetitious way, in a more, I'm going to move you, now you move yourself type of a manner. There are therapists in the pediatric world that are working more on movement patterns. Maybe it's PNF, maybe it is stretching, rotation, crossing midline. They're stabilizing some joints and gently mobilizing other joints. And I mean mobilization in just like a really small baby butterfly style of just like passive range of motion way. Okay, so that is all for the different styles of therapists that I have come up with. If you know a couple of different styles of pediatric physical therapists, definitely shoot them down below. I would love to hear like a couple different ones, and I'm sure there's tons and tons. The purpose of this video is really just to encourage you to experiment and to figure out what your superpower is in peds, and to own the type of therapist that you are, and not necessarily feel less than when you compare yourself to other therapists, maybe in your building or that you come across in the future of your peds career. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It really helps this channel be able to be found by more parents or physical therapists so that they can help kiddos move more confidently and explore their world. Thanks, guys.